Hi, Melanie.
Hi there. How are you, hon?
Doing great. Thank you for meeting us from the road. And we're going to get
Yeah.
started.
Okay.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm Zakia Thomas, President CEO of the ERA Coalition. We appreciate this opportunity today to tell you about some of the fantastic work our partners are doing in the field to get out the vote ahead of this election. And I know we're all super excited. We're down to the wire. All of this is going to make a huge impact on the outcome of the election. We're happy to give you ways in which you can plug in and learn more about the work that's going on. So to get started, I do want to show you a quick video of our Equal Voice, Equal Vote campaign, just to set the stage. We have two campaigns this season, this election season. One is focusing on mobilizing voters, especially young voters, to get them to the polls by talking about ways in which their voice matters and their vote matters. And we call that our Equal Voice, Equal Vote campaign. So we've asked young people, and actually people across the spectrum, to share with us why voting matters to them, and and why it should matter to other people, and why they're actually going out and exercising their vote, and the importance of that. So if we have that video queued up, we can show that, and then I can dive right in with our speakers.
No matter your gender, you should be able to pursue whatever you want and should be treated like a full human being.
This election cycle, we're seeing women's rights be in the center of a steep political battle.
The fact that we are not equal in the eyes of our Constitution, and it's a slap in the face for women across this country.
So many countries around the world that are more developed or even less developed have an Equal Rights Amendment. And I think if we had the amendment, we would know that we are protected in this country.
It would be a momentous step forward towards progress and towards gender equality.
See voting as self-empowerment.
I think it's very important when it comes to voting, knowing that every voice matters and that every vote counts.
So I wanted to give you a glimpse of the campaign that we have coming up, but now I'm going to dive right in with our first panel for today. And our first panel really focuses on folks who are mobilizing to get people out to vote. And they're doing what we call C3 work, so it's education and public information campaigns. So with us today, we have Selena Stewart, the Chief Executive Officer of the League of Women Voters of the United States, Maxim Thorne, the Chief Executive Officer of Civic Influencers, and Melanie Campbell, the President and CEO of the National Coalition for Black Civic Participation, convener of the Black Women's Roundtable. So I'm going to kick us off and get started. Selena, I'll start with you. Your organization is working to mobilize some of the most influential voting blocs. What are the tools and strategies you're using to most effectively get folks to vote, whether it's absentee or physically going to the polls, or for early voting or on election day?
Yeah, so one of the major tools that we have, and hello everybody, so good to see everybody virtually and so wonderful to be here, so thank you for the invitation. I would say that the main tool we're using is Vote for 1-1, which is really our one-stop shop for checking your voter registration, getting registered if for some reason you are not, seeing who's on your ballot and what they believe in so you can start to make a voting plan, and even like where you can vote. So of course, during the early voting period, there's usually more flexibility. And then as you get closer to election day, you're usually, having your one spot to vote. And so we have already seen this month alone, 1.2 million people visit that resource online. And so I think that that's very hopeful in terms of people as being a signal that people are really ready to get engaged, know what's on their ballot, and make a plan for election day. So I think that that's certainly a tool. But beyond that, leagues do so much voter education in communities. We are doing candidate forums. We are out there tabling at festivals and fairs and all types of things, making sure that people can check their registration, get ready to vote, and all the things. So we're everywhere right now as we push for these last 2 weeks before election.
And Melanie, I know you're on the road right now. You're actually out there trying to get out the vote. So what are you all doing right now to mobilize and influence our most important voting blocs?
Thank you so much. And I'm sorry that I'm out here in the street. I couldn't avoid it this morning. But we are out here. We're actually on a 7-state GOTV bus tour, getting out the vote in 7 states, battleground states. Right now we're in Ohio. But on the tour, we're doing all the things. We're canvassing, we're door knocking. We just left Pittsburgh, where there's a large line dance population. It's a big cultural thing in Pittsburgh. So we were line dancing in the streets. We're going to churches. We're doing all kinds of things to ensure traditional and non-traditional, right? Because we have to go where people are. We were in jazz clubs, right? In Maryland, where you have a big go-go community working partner with Reverend Tony Lee, and who is a board member, but also very engaged in the go-go community. So they're hitting nightclubs at night, 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, right? So we're leaving what I say no stone unturned. We're doing traditional, we're doing digital, but mainly we're bringing our tour is called Power to Ballot Freedom and Joy Tour. We're trying to bring that joy, bring that excitement. And in Pittsburgh, they had a tea where they had that going on. So it's what's been great being on the ground. We've been since we started on a week ago Saturday, and we've been in 3 states. Actually now the 4th state in the last 9 days. And so the whole idea is, and these are states that we've been working. We did the tour in the spring. And then we're headed south to Alabama and Georgia and Florida. It's been the last, I guess, 12 days in the South. But it is about making sure that we use all means to get out the vote. So, and we have about 60 organizations that are part of our coalition, national as well as state, and lifting up the work of those who are doing the work on the ground, who need some joy as well, right? Because it's a hard election cycle, very hard election cycle this year. So we've been really, really pushing hard to do what we can to make sure. And the turnout has been great in a lot of places. But we also have something called Are You Vote Ready, which is a digital campaign to make sure that people know what to do. We partner with Election Protection to put that 1-866-our vote number on everything. There's many of these states. And so it's also going to be about people making sure their vote gets counted, and that a lot of these shenanigans, nonpartisan but factual, you got people setting up to try to challenge the results if they don't like the results. So we got to get ready for that as well.
Well, thank you for being out there and for getting folks out to vote, because as you said, this is a very important election. We need to meet people where they are to get them to the polls and understand the importance. So with that, Maxim, I'll turn to you and ask the same question. What are you all doing to mobilize some of the most influential voting blocs?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. This is such an exciting time for us. This is the time that adrenaline is running really high. And it's really important because we know, and we are telling our communities, which are community colleges, trade, technical, and vocational schools, people of color serving institutions like historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions, tribal colleges, places that are often overlooked, or certainly overlooked, by campaigns and by other folks who are trying to get out the vote. And we've been focusing on that. And we're inspired because we often hear our vote doesn't matter. And there's been sort of a very depressing sense, that a nihilistic sense that it's all over. And these 2 weeks that are left, is the most important 2 weeks in our lives for our democracy. That you know, and I know, and they know, that everything we do will matter. That is such a privilege in life, to know that these last days before November 5th and through November 5th, what you do will matter. So we are very data-driven, which sounds very odd because most people who do this kind of work, they are coming from a moral place, a place of justice and rights vindication and constitution, which is wonderful because I'm a lawyer. However, we're data-driven to prove to young people and with young people how easy it is to vote and to win. So I want to share with you a couple of things that we find very empowering and they find very empowering. So they help us and have been working on these heat maps. So if you ever saw the COVID heat maps in the New York Times or the LA Times, or infant mortality and morbidity, we use the same technology to show the opportunities they have or the battles they will encounter to get folks like themselves out to vote. And this is color-coded by them to show how we rank states. Are they very favorable? Are they not favorable? And we focus, as you will see here, so this is civicinfluencers.org, heat maps. It shows which House races they can swing. And the reason I say swing in a nonpartisan context is that it's about your power as a generation of Gen Z and millennials to have a say and to determine outcomes, however you want to determine outcomes, and on the issues you care about. Gay rights, racial justice, saving the climate, abortion access. It says what your power, given your demographics, can do. It tells you the House races, where they're the tightest margins. Like Colorado 8, that was won by 645 votes. And in 2020, it's even more spectacular. Places in Iowa that was won by 6 votes, or California, 119 votes, or New York, 133 votes. That means your dorm room, the gospel choir, the glee club, the marching band could all swing that election. That's really empowering. And we do that in a very calibrated way for this election. And you'll see House races, you'll see Senate races, you'll see the presidential battleground states that we've identified that young people themselves can swing, and young people of color, community colleges, trade, technical, and vocational schools, people of color serving institutions. This gives us a real sense of power and purpose in these last days. And here you'll see our campus presence, all those little dots, all those yellow dots and triangles. So what does it mean? What does it mean? We are arming folks with this data, with actual numbers of what made up the margin in 2020 in House, Senate, and presidential races. And how much of that margin were young people responsible for? So you, as a young person, are responsible for that margin, overturning that margin, or beating that margin, given your numbers. So if you're talking about 10,000 in Georgia, or 10,000 in Nevada, or you're talking about 6 votes in Iowa in a House race, or whatever, that's what I want you to focus on. So this 12 years, the 12 days, or 14 days before the election, we're assigning people in their communities, the young people, to barbershops to make sure every day you are getting 10 new stealth voters that no one is focused on. That you are getting folks who speak Somali, you're getting Vietnamese, you are getting people in the Latinx diaspora who are low information voters, and you're going to provide them very specific information. So I was asked in this, let me give you 3 things that we have found in our focus groups that are moving the needle. Young people, hi Maria Teresa. Young people say, very specifically, Donald Trump gave me money. I've heard this with my own ears at Dunkin' Donuts in Paterson, New Jersey, because he signed the check that I received. And I haven't gotten a check from President Biden, Kamala Harris, etc. And we think, how is this? How is this? What can I do? What can we do to make it concrete for young people? So that they can say, I can see it visually. I can see it visually. So one of the things that we have done is create checks, which we want everyone to download from our website. And you'll see some very specific things. So we know, for example, Mojave Community College in Arizona receives $600,000 from this administration, which is about $600 a student that they never got before. We know that John Smith College in North Carolina got hundreds of thousands of dollars. That if you spread it over the students, they will actually see how much new money. We're making checks about what young people got in terms of loan forgiveness in particular areas, and getting folks to stand with these for older folks, publish a clearinghouse check like things that show them I got money, I got this loan forgiveness, and now I can move on with my life. And that kind of concrete visual has an impact. Now, connecting with this conversation to make it real for a lot of young women, especially a lot of young women in more conservative evangelical spaces, we are doing this campaign. Again, I'm saying this because I love all of you to download this, and I'm raising funds to help us get this out. So look at this, and I hope this will resonate with you. So some of this sounds partisan. I do realize, right?
And Maxim, this is fantastic. I'd love to get over to Melody and talk about some of the work some of the issues that they're seeing as well.
Yes, yes, and I will get out of this in a moment. So, so you see that we're trying to make this very specific, very strategic, to get out a small but meaningful and swingable number of young people who can swing the election on the issues they care about. We are not telling them who to vote for. We're giving them information to help their decision-making on the issues that they care about to build their power and their future. And that is our strategy that we have shown worked in 2020, that stopped the red tsunami in 2022, and that will work this year.
Well, that's fantastic. And I love that. And that really does segue into our next question for Melanie. What are the issues you're hearing from voters that are especially motivating them?
Thank you. Our whole campaign, Power the Ballot, is literally a ballot, right? We have this big bus with the issues that we started this over a year ago. We started in Florida with the Power the Ballot campaign so that we could listen to folks. Went through the primary season to come up with what issues people were telling us about in those same states that I had mentioned earlier. And so the number one issue across every state, every generation was economic security, economic justice. So it is the number one issue. But then there are the issues that stand out are around rights, especially younger women, around the reproductive rights, the control of our own bodies. You get down in the South where you have a lot of voter suppression and voting rights laws being passed in the states as well. So you see voting rights high on the list, and it goes like that. So really the most important one has been economic security, economic justice, and then rights and freedoms. And so that idea of what that means and what we're hearing from students, we've been on HBCU campuses as well. And really, and even in some, in all kinds of neighborhoods, working with returning citizens. For instance, in Kalamazoo, Michigan, we were there a couple of days ago, listening to the brothers there who had concerns, and even their concerns is more about economic opportunity, right, and ideas and things like that. So for us, we're a walking billboard, a riding billboard, if you will, and I'm on the bus as much as I can be. Going from city to city and town to town, and we've gone into red states, red cities and blue cities, right? We were in Pittsburgh. There are several communities that we went in because in many of these places, when you try to map out where to go, it's not always a concentrated place. Black people are splintered in a lot of these counties that are red and blue and everything else in between. So through our state leaders who map out where we go, is really targeting those low propensity voters, making sure that we target them, but know that the issues, and then in some places, we ask the question again, what are you saying? What are you concerned about? Senior citizens are concerned about their Social Security. They're worried about their Medicare and access to those kinds of things. But also concerned about what's happening with our democracy is something that Black people care about as well. As others, and so that's where we are focusing our energies, and we're gonna go. We're not letting off the gas. Literally, we're going to be on the road until November 5th.
Well, thank you for doing that.
And I'm going to apologize that I have to sign off early because we do need to get to our next destination. I stopped to make sure I could have a good Wi-Fi.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Mel, and thank you for doing the work and being out there getting people to the polls.
And come get on the bus, girl.
Yes, we'll follow the bus.
Okay, all right. Thank y'all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So, Selena, let me get back to you. And either of these questions. So what do you think is at stake in this election? And how are you seeing, in particular, gender equality in the ERA as part of this election cycle, if you are seeing it as part of this election cycle?
So yeah, a few things. So like Melanie mentioned, we just finished what we have called the 2024 election tour, where myself and the president were traveling the states. We started in North Carolina, then went to Georgia and Florida and Pennsylvania, and finished in Michigan, Nevada, and Arizona just recently. And so when we were traveling, many of the tabling events we did were on college campuses. And what I have found, which is not completely surprising, is in talking with young folks, a lot of folks are undecided in terms of what they're going to do. And some folks, even whether or not they're going to vote. And so I think I've been having some non-traditional conversations. And what I mean by that is asking young people, are you planning to vote? Do you have a voting plan? And the responses that I have gotten has varied from, I don't think it matters. People are just going to do what they're going to do anyway. And so it really drove a deeper conversation, or what I could consider a non-traditional conversation, where I'm just like, why don't you feel like you matter? And I remember asking some young African-American gentlemen in Arizona, when's the last time you thought you mattered, or like you felt you mattered? And making a connection between that, because this discourse that we're having in this country, I think, can be very traumatizing for one generation who sees us going backwards. But for a newer generation, sometimes there seems to be a disconnect with where their place is in this moment in history as we're heading to this election. And so I think having those conversations are so important. But I think in terms of the ballot, to me, I see two big issues on the ballot: equality and democracy. Like the conversations are circling around all types of things, but the fact that, it's 2024, and in how many states is it? I think it's 6 states right now, where there is, even in Maryland, I live in Maryland, and I just filled out my ballot earlier this week, and it was on my ballot as well. But there's 10 states where they're trying to codify the right to make decisions for yourself. And that's in Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Maryland, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, New York, Nevada, and South Dakota. That's a lot of states who are having to take these additional steps to have the right to their own decisions, make decisions for themselves. So we have seen an enormous surge in interest in the status, the prospective impact, and also just the viability of the publication of the ERA specifically among our members. And I think that started following Dobbs for sure, but it just continues to intensify as the last 2 election cycles. This continues to be a conversation, and women across the country do not have the same right. It's very different depending on where you live. And so I hope that people are motivated to turn up and turn out and make sure that we are making our voice heard, because by not voting, some issues and some people remain invisible. And I just don't think we can afford to do that this round.
And you made a very good point about meeting voters who say their vote doesn't count. And you talked a little bit about this, but how do you, for those of us who have those kind of conversations too, how do you have that conversation with someone so they actually feel empowered that it does make a difference? Because in the day-to-day lives, it's hard to see that kind of result and turn around so quickly. You make a vote and it may or may not impact what's going on. But what are the things you found that actually resonate with people when you're asking those questions?
So to me, I think we have to have some situational awareness. I've been voting for more than 2 decades, but so often I have heard people have this conversation where they're calling people out for voting. And I feel like it's an opportunity to call people in. Like, what is it? What is the barrier between you and wanting to vote? Because everyone at this point, when you're voting, you're grown. You can make decisions for yourself. So to me, it's about, let's interrogate what that is about, and connecting voting to power, and how you can either be visible and make your voice heard or not. Whatever decision you make, you should make that decision for yourself. But regardless of what the decision is, there's going to be an outcome to this election. So I think it comes down to whether or not people want to participate and how they value their own voice in making up the fabric of where we're headed. Because, this, depending on the outcome of the election, it could be some many people on this call, our work will change either drastically or less drastically, and maybe in a more positive direction, we'll see. But this is, I just keep reminding people that in 1941, Germans did not realize that that would be the last election of their time. I'm just trying to be very cognizant of the moment that we're in and history repeating themselves and making sure that I contribute in a positive way and encourage others to do the same by really tapping into what it is that disconnects them from this process.
That is a very positive note for us to think about. And before we go, we have a couple more minutes. Maxima, I want to ask both you and Selena this question. And Selena, since we have you here, I'll just go straight to you. What are ways that people who are on this call can get involved in the work that you're doing right now to actually help move the needle?
So I would say this is the perfect time to have a conversation about the Electoral College. So we have the One Person, One Vote campaign talking about what we're doing. Like many people in this country still don't know that when we go cast our ballot during early voting period or on election day, we're actually voting for a set of electors who are ultimately going to cast their ballot for the president. And so immediately following the election, we're launching 1 Million Conversations where we want people to just know what it means to vote in this country and what that looks like. But I think between now and election day, the most important thing is make your voting plan and bring 3 people with you. Voting is a community action. It has always been for Black people and other people of color and people generally. It's a community action. So when you're voting or when I'm voting, I always think about voting not only on behalf of myself, but on behalf of the people in my family who cannot vote for whatever reason, and people who are coming after me in any other form or fashion. And so if we think about it like that, I think we'll get more people engaged. So find a way to engage, make your voting plan, bring 3 people with you, and don't stop the conversation after election day. We're all accountable to the outcome.
Thank you. Maxima, we'll end with you. What are the ways that people can get involved in the campaigns you have?
Yeah, I want to underscore everything Selena just said and offer a frame that I wish President Obama had used, that we are using with young men. Young men of color, young Black men of every generation in America have been the most progressive men in America. Let's understand that. They always overwhelmingly vote for the progressive candidate, for civil rights, for women's rights, for gay rights. Let's be very clear, over 50%. That is not true for any other demographic of men in history in America, frankly, or even for women who are not Black women or Latinx women. Let's be very clear. So we have a wonderful opportunity to not lose our progressive history. How do we maintain that legacy in which we've always been on the right side of history for ourselves, for our Black communities, for our Native American communities, our First Nation communities, our Latin communities? This is how we do it. We do it by showing up again and again for our people and our history and our vision of the future that we have been fighting for forever. That is a very empowering message. And our strategy, which I really would like you to help with, is stealth voters. Stealth voters. So we have been focusing, as I mentioned, on HBCUs, but we are not spending these last 2 weeks because everybody else is doing it on Morehouse and Spelman and Howard. Do this with folks that you have not seen. And since this is early voting and there's some places that you can still register to vote in the early voting period, take people with you as a community, as the barbershop, as the massage school, as the beauty school, as the beauty shop. And we're doing that. And if you're talking about taking 5 people every day or 10 people every day and they're 3 friends, you are beating that margin with stealth voters. And that is our strategy. And with these posters that I've put in the chat room, post them on the church wall, at the mosque, post them at the synagogue, post them at evangelical bathrooms, hand them out at the supermarket to women and girls and other people that you see. That alone can make the big difference in that extra vote that we need for us to win and to preserve our freedoms. And those little things, those very discreet little things will make a huge difference and have people feel what I feel, that this is our moment to show up and that every day we will make a difference.
Well, thank you both, and thank you to Melanie, who had to hop off because she's out in the field doing the work. We appreciate your time here. And if I voted on Monday, so you know what? It's still early voting time. Go out there, get that little sticker. They have fancy ones this year that say presidential election. Haven't seen that before, but they're fantastic. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bettina so we can talk with some of our other partners about the more political C4 work and PAC work that's going on. Bettina?
Thank you so much, Zakia, and thank you to everyone on the first part of the briefing. It was really, really informative and inspiring. And I love what you said, Maxim, is that it is a honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to make a difference. So part of our next campaign, our C4 campaign, is aimed at ensuring that when people get to the ballot box, they know who to vote for. And to really educate on the candidates and where the candidates stand. And it is exciting to hear that like Zakia, many people are early voting, but it is also a little scary because we want to make sure that they know who they're voting for. And so that's why we're pushing this out now, and we'll continue to be pushing it through the end of the election cycle. So before we get into the next kind of C4 part of the conversation, we're going to share just a short video explaining what our equal voice, our elect equality campaign is. So thank you so much. Baloo is bringing it up right now.
Today, we fight to preserve our democracy and freedom from those who are stripping away our rights. Our strongest weapon is the Equal Rights Amendment. It's time to ensure that sex discrimination is explicitly barred by the United States Constitution. We need gender justice now, no compromise on our rights. Find your ERA certified candidates with our Elect Equality tool and vote in the fall elections like your equality depends on it, because it does. Take action now, for yourself, for everyone you love and care about. Let's get this done. Join us in making a stand for democracy and freedom by electing equality this November. Let's ensure that gender equality is not just a promise, but a reality.
Thank you so much. And that's why, these two campaigns that the Coalition and Coalition Forward are putting together are because you can't really have one without the other. You could have the best candidates in the world. If no one shows up to vote, then they don't get elected. Or you could have a lot of voters, but if they don't know who the right person is to elect on that ballot, we could end up in a bad spot. So that's why it's so important, and it's so important for us to highlight the different work that our partners are doing both on the C3 and the C4 side, because it is incredibly important to have both. I'm really excited to now introduce the speakers for our next part of the briefing. I'm going to start with Zakia Thomas, who you just heard from. She is our president and CEO of the ERA Coalition and ERA Coalition Forward, and can talk a little bit more about our C4 work. Additionally, we have Ellie Smeal. So if everyone who is off video can join on video so that the attendees can see you. So Ellie Smeal, the president and co-founder of the Feminist Majority. Maria Teresa Kumar, who is the president and chief executive officer of Voto Latino. And Layuba Gretchen Shirley, who is the president and founder of Vote Mama, who are all doing amazing work in the C4 space. And I know some of you do additionally have PACs, so working to get candidates elected who are pro-equality. So I want to just open up with a question, and it's framed around elect equality because that's a campaign we're doing, but also recognizing that you all are doing important work around the C4. And just, the ERA Coalition's Elect Equality campaign aims to educate voters on pro-equality candidates with our interactive tool. Just why is it so important to you that as we're mobilizing, we're also sharing this information with the public on individual candidates to make sure that they know who to vote for when they're at the ballot box? So I'm going to start with you, Zakia, to just expand maybe a little bit on our elect equality, but then also want to hear from everyone else on what they're doing.
I put our elect equality page in the chat so those who want to check it out. But we are making sure that everyone knows where their candidates in the House, the Senate, and for president stand on quality issues. As Maxim said before, we're not partisan, but the truth is, and Melanie said this too, the truth is there are certain candidates who do well on the Equal Rights Amendment, certain candidates who don't. And by the Equal Rights Amendment, it's a larger extension of gender equality. So we have candidates who voted, Senator Vance just voted against advancing the Equal Rights Amendment. We have the Vice President candidate, Tim Walz, who actually co-sponsored legislation that would move equal rights forward. President Trump's administration is the one that stopped the ERA from being published in 2020. Kamala Harris has voiced her support for it. So we do need people to understand the implications of their vote. Voting elections have consequences. So we want to make sure people are informed before they go to the ballot, because we need to know where our candidates stand.
Thank you so much, Zakia. Ellie, I'll turn to you. I know you've been doing a lot of work on educating, not just on who the candidates are, but also on what they support. So why do you feel it's so important to be sharing this information with voters?
Well, it's very, very important. Anyway, we operate on several levels. We have a C3 Feminist Majority Foundation, which wholly owns also Ms. And our C4 has a PAC, a federal PAC. It also has a state PACs. It also, now this election, we have an independent expenditure campaign that is aimed at making sure that more young people are voting and that we can afford to reach them. Maxim has been telling us about the importance of recognizing that a small group of people, well-funded or not, can make a big difference. So what we've done is we have a C3 campus program, which is educational and very divorced from our C4 part, which is for at election time, where we are on campuses in battleground states, urging young people, obviously students, young or old, to vote. And we have a campaign in which on each of the campuses, and this year we're on, on campuses in 8 states, and we're targeting those that in numbers could make a very big difference. We're in all the ones that you've heard so much about: Arizona, Pennsylvania, North Carolina. I won't go into them all. But the importance is that we have on the campus teams. We have teams of about 5 people with a coordinator reaching out to the students. And every effort, we have a lot of volunteers, hundreds of volunteers. So essentially with a core group of a very small, actually, it reaches to a bigger group of volunteers. And the goal is that you increase the student vote. Now, why are we so interested in the student vote? Obviously, the next generation has a lot to lose and has been under voting for quite a few years. In other words, the elderly people or older people vote at about a 2/3 level. The young people, depending on what type of election it is, have been voting more, even at 25% or at 40%, but nowhere near what the steady vote of the older people are. So we want to bring that vote up, and we also want to tell them how important the Equal Rights Amendment is, how important reproductive justice or reproductive rights are, pay equality, the whole issue of climate change, and guns. So in other words, we not only push the issues of the feminist movement, such as the Equal Rights Amendment, but we also reach out to other organizations that have similar interests. But before you know it, we're all working for not only the same candidates, but the word on the Equal Rights Amendment, for example, gets more and more play. I mean, if you're worried about reproductive justice, you have to have a bigger base in the Constitution. That base is the Equal Rights Amendment to provide full equality. Anyway, we provide the teams with flyers on the issues, with not a lot of, we don't want to swamp them, but flyers, posters, rounds, the signs that are around right now. This year it's Kamala, et cetera. So there is a lot of materials that they don't have to go out and recreate, and saves a lot of money by doing them in a group. And basically, right this year, we've hired 183 coordinators and organizers in these various campuses, and at the same time are recruiting a huge army of volunteers. The whole idea is to make that student vote reach the same plateau for now. Someday we want it even bigger, as the older people's vote is. But it also goes on the same premise that Maxim has been talking about, is that that elections are won by very frequently by very narrow margins in these battleground states. And so you are making, by doing it this way, a key, delivering a key vote where each one of those votes are imperative for that victory. By the way, we are looking at not only the president and vice president, but we're also giving out information on House candidates, Senate candidates. We have a very close House, as you well know. Just a few votes can make the biggest difference. So we're very involved in the House there. We're also involved in the Senate, and basically within mind, we know where the races are close, and there are a few more people voting can make a difference. The thing that we have seen now for the last couple of years, I just want to finish what I'm saying, and I'll this one more sentence, is that the students know who they want to vote for. They are very informed, and and basically that's why so many volunteers jump in. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ellie. And Maria Teresa, thank you so much for being here. The work that you do at Voto Latino, I know, is incredibly important. Similarly, educating voters. What have are there specific areas or communities that you're particularly focusing on this election cycle? Are you finding, as Ellie is saying, that the voters are already informed, they know who they want to vote for, or is it something that you're really needing to share more information on the issues, and what issues have you found to be most compelling to voters for this next election cycle?
Well, first of all, thank you for having this conversation. At Voto Latino, we believe that it's when we work in coalition and talk to these individuals that may be on the fence or warm to participating that makes all the difference. What I mean by that, when we were in Arizona and Nevada during the 2022 election, we learned very quickly that 50% of Latino voters had not been contacted in the midterm, the one that was going to help determine who controlled the Senate. So we went in and we dug in and learned that of the 50% that had not been contacted, not shockingly, they were low propensity voters and young voters. In many cases, it's the same person. And what I mean by that, in a place like Arizona, in a place like Nevada, where a third of the voter is at minimum under the age of 29, they don't have a voting history. And if you don't have a voting history, campaigns don't talk to you. But it was because we were able to deploy $4 million into the field. We had to reshuffle our map. We had 5 states that we were going to do low propensity voter targeting in the 2022 election. We had Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Nevada. And we had $4 million targeted for it. But when we realized that there was a real lag among a third of these voters in Nevada and Arizona, we shifted all our resources. And the last 18 days of the election, we were able to target them with mail, and we were able to target them with digital advertising, and coordinated on radio, and worked very closely with our local partners. When you see who brought Cortez Masto's to the dance in the Senate, when you see that it was to the same thing with Mark Kelly, it was literally low propensity Latino youth voters. And this was after, after back of the analysis. And so we at Voto Latino recognize that college campuses are very, very important, especially because oftentimes they are first generation Latinos. So that means it's their first in the family to go to college, but they're also the person that is helping their families back home decide how and where to vote. So we target them specifically. This election, we're on over 200 college campuses only in battleground states, because we believe that in the battleground states is where the margin of difference makes sense. We are also doing something that we learned in 2022. For folks that are not familiar with us, we are the largest voter registration organization specifically targeting Latino youth. In 2020, we registered 650,000 folks. 82% went on to go to college. But what made me the most proud was that 63% of them did not have a college education, meaning that we were targeting the folks that have the least information oftentimes, but the most cynical towards government and the most to lose if government does not work for them. And so based on all those learnings, we are doubling down on these low propensity voters. And we have a universe of roughly 3.5 million folks that are going to receive messaging from us. I'm going to briefly just share my screen so you can get a sense of what I'm talking about. But we basically did this. Can you see this voter guide? Oh, let's see. How about now? Can you guys see this voter guide? It's a little messy, but
yeah.
Okay, so this voter guide, believe it or not, is based on one that we did for Beto against Abbott. And it turned out that by sending a voter guide specifically to low propensity voters, very targeted, they ended up increasing their participation rate by 0.5%. In elections that are won by 2,000-3,000 votes, that's material. When we send these out, we're going to send them out to 3.5 million low propensity voters in Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, and Texas. And that's where we concentrate on. But it's very simple, and we do it specifically on really beautiful colored branding because we want people to want to read it. We make sure that we avoid it making it look like an official election material, because we learned that people oftentimes don't feel like they've been invited if they do so. So even the way this is laid out, even the colors, even the way it's designed, all of it has been done with gazillion different types of testing, and we do it on purpose. Of this flyer, believe it or not, in a very crowded field in 2022, this right here proved the most effective piece of mailer in the 2022 election against all the other groups online. So we were very, very proud of it. We have a fantastic design team. They're all in their, early mid, late 20s, early 30s. So they really talk with the authenticity of our audience. We also deploy text messaging. We actually in 2006, to really date myself, we actually deployed the very first voter registration via text messaging in 2006 before the iPhone. It was horrendous experiment. We didn't actually meet what we wanted to do, but what we did learn is that while we didn't register the 50,000 folks that we wanted to do via text messaging, what we were able to do was by texting these individuals. It turned out that because young Latinos, again, don't receive campaign information, their participation increased 8 points for someone that received just a simple text reminder. We used to use it when you guys remember the free minutes, those free minutes during the weekend. We would encourage our volunteers to do text banking. This is now a cornerstone of the Get Out the Vote industry, but we experimented it with first, and then we were able to share our results with other groups. And so we will continue doing this. October 29th is early vote day. Mark your calendars. If you guys want to volunteer with Voto Latino, let us know. But on October 29th, we are going to, with our 200 campuses across the country and with our, thousands of our volunteers, we're about 6,000 volunteers, we're going to actively text bank our 3.5 million low propensity voters. And we're encouraging folks to do so early because we recognize that if you are waiting until the last minute, it's going to cause long lines. We want people to be incredibly informed. And we also have learned through testing that if people feel that there's a fear of missing out, if they see their neighbors going out to vote, if the headlines are screaming people are voting, it actually encourages people to say, oh, wait a second, I want to be part of that. And what a better way to do it than when we're about to make history by electing Kamala Harris as the first female candidate in the White House. We're looking forward to it. And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Great, thank you so much. And that is an absolutely beautiful voter guide. It would change how I vote as well.
Oh,
I love the flowers.
super kind.
I love the colors.
I cannot take credit. I just ask and they're like, oh, this is the one that we're using this year, but I'm very proud of them. And this is actually, we also did letter writing campaigns this year on college campuses. And if you can see, it's again, bright. If you go to this QR code, it's how do you make a plan to vote? We try to make it very simple and not over, but it does create this, again, this energy. And for college kids, they also end up framing it and sharing it with their friends and stuff. So we want to make it really pretty so that we recognize that especially younger generations, they're really into their aesthetic. I borrow this from my 12-year-old. I keep telling her that's not really a word, but that's what they use. So they're really into their brand and everything. So Volta Latino, again, we like to make things that are something that they're proud to wear so that they could actually become our walking billboards.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I do think that effective communication is so important, especially from people who are kind of more entering the the voting and government, and there's a lot of distrust of government. So making it feel almost kind of inviting is really important into encouraging people to participate, because sometimes it can feel non-inviting when you see all the negative ads out there. It's just not a fun thing to get involved with. So I really appreciate that. And now I want to ask Liuba from Vote Mama what you all are doing to target and promote the candidates. I know that you work really hard to elect young mothers or mothers with children under the age of 18. I was really excited to hear about the work you did to many states are now allowing candidates to use their money to for childcare to help them get on the road. So what are some of the programs that you are working on? How are you reaching voters? And kind of what messages have you found that they're responding to right now?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. So I'm Liuba Gresham-Shirley. I'm the founder and CEO of Vote Mama. We have our C3 Vote Mama Foundation, our C4 is Vote Mama Lobby and Vote Mama PAC. The work that you're mentioning on campaign funds for childcare is work that we're doing on both our foundation and our lobby side. When I ran for Congress in 2018, my older two children were 1 and 3 at the time. And I petitioned the Federal Election Commission and became the first woman to receive approval to use campaign funds for childcare. We have been now working to get that approved across the country for state and local candidates. We actually just got our 36th state with Idaho last week, which is incredible. And we've been tracking who is using campaign funds for childcare. So over $1 million have now been spent of campaign funds on childcare. The majority of those funds have been spent by women, and the majority of those funds have been spent by women of color. So it sounds like a small structural campaign finance change, but it really has the ability to completely transform the political landscape and who steps up and runs. We have been conducting research. We actually just celebrated our 5th anniversary. And over the last 5 years, we've endorsed and supported over 500 Democratic moms running from school board to Senate in 38 states. We've passed campaign funds for childcare in 36 states, and we've raised $10 million for our movement. On our PAC side right now, we have over 200 candidates that we've endorsed this cycle alone. We have been directly fundraising for them. We've endorsed them, coaching them. We do not offer training. There are so many organizations that offer training, but we do really one-on-one direct support of our candidates. Someone once asked me when I first launched, they said, how many moms do you need to get elected to feel successful? And I said, it's not about the number of moms we elect, but it's about the normalization of what it looks like to run and serve as a mom. We were just talking about this earlier, but our political system was not designed for moms. Our political system was designed for wealthy, older, white, landowning men because it was designed by them. And our policies have been failing women and children for generations because legislators legislate on their lived experience, and we're missing critical lived experience at the decision-making table. I don't need to preach to the choir about how terrible our policies are here, but I will gladly talk about them if you'd like in a little bit. But we want to change how people serve in office. You look at our state legislatures in particular, most people don't realize that there are only 4 states that pay a livable wage. That's it. So if you run for a state legislative seat, if you're not independently wealthy, it's really difficult to stay in that seat. In New Mexico, you don't get paid anything. In New Hampshire, you're getting paid $200 for a 2-year session. So we're working on things like actually paying your state legislators a livable wage, proxy voting, virtual voting, paid family leave for legislators. Something as simple as having changing tables and pumping rooms, on-site childcare. This makes a huge difference in who runs. And then we're working with these incredible moms when they step up to run. So when we actually have our application right now, every single one of our moms that we've endorsed has filled out an application and gone through an interview process. Every single one supports the ERA. So we have 215 vetted candidates right now that actively support the ERA and want to see women in the Constitution. We were actively kept out of the Constitution. We do not have equal rights under the law in this country right now, and we need to change that. So right now we have endorsed, we're focused right now on our red to blue candidates, our federal protects that we're working on, really trying to raise as much money as possible for those candidates. And we've targeted 4 states. So Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. We have full slates of Democratic mamas running in those states. We have launched giving circles for each of those states where we're raising funds to go directly to those candidates. We are 13 days out from Election Day. These are the most critical states. Every dollar that we send to these women, they are using to go out and turn voter turnout and knock on doors. And that is all going to help us actually hopefully be able to say Madam President in a few weeks. And that's really our biggest focus right now, is on getting the money that we can raise to these candidates so they can go out and knock on doors and talk to voters and make sure that they flip those seats. Our red to blue candidates, we're supporting Janelle Bynum in Oregon, Kristen McDonald-Rivet in Michigan, Missy Cotter-Smalsel in Virginia, Whitney Fox in Florida, and Laura Gillen on Long Island. Those are our top red to blues. And then got candidates in 38 states right now.
Thank you so much, Liuba. And I know we're just about out of time, but I want to ask one thing, because as we were saying, it can get very heavy. We know, and this will make it heavy, but we know that and feel that potentially this election cycle could be instrumental to saving our democracy. That is heavy. And especially as we're looking to pass legislation to recognize the Equal Rights Amendment as valid in Congress, the work that you're doing is so important, because we know that you are all working for pro-equality candidates, as we are. So just really quickly, if you could just say, one, how you could, for the people who are viewing this, how they can get involved. I see so many people in the chat saying they're so excited to have the opportunity to hear from our partners on what campaigns that they're doing. So how can they get involved? And then 2, just to uplift it a little bit, has there been anything that has surprised you or encouraged you this election cycle, and given you hope for what we're going to see in 2 weeks? And how can we all kind of capitalize and continue to move that forward, and inspire people to go out to vote for these pro-equality candidates? And then I will turn it to you, Zakia. So maybe I will go backwards in order. So I'll start with you, Liuba.
I think the thing that's been most exciting is Florida. Whitney Fox started out as a candidate that people were not really that excited about in terms of whether or not she had the ability to win. She made red to blue. She is polling right now ahead of Anna Paulina Luna. She's outraising her. She's outworking her. I think she has a very serious chance of beating Anna Paulina Luna, and that would be an incredible seat to win. And Whitney Fox is the perfect candidate for that. She's doing such good work right now. And then Debbie McCarcel-Powell in Florida as well. This is, I think, the best chance we have of picking up a seat in the Senate. She is tied basically with Rick Scott, who, he spent more than $60 million of his own money last year and still only won by less than a percentage point. He is universally disliked, and I think we absolutely can win. She is the person to beat him right now, and she is running a really, really great campaign. So I'm really excited about Florida. I'm excited about all of our moms at this point. They're running really great races and they're doing the work. So I'm most excited about Florida, and we have a chance right now to flip Arizona. It's the closest state in the country to flipping. We need 2 seats in each chamber. That's critical. If we can get out the vote in Arizona, we can do that. We have to protect a 1-seat majority in Michigan. In North Carolina, we have the chance to break a supermajority. We have a lot of really great opportunities this year. We have 13 days left. So I'm very excited.
Thank you so much, Maria Teresa. And yes, I've heard that if we can get those majorities in the Arizona House, we can get another, and Senate, we can get another state to ratify. But Maria Teresa, to you.
Well, what I love is that it seems like we're all focusing on the same battleground states to mobilize the voters that we need. In the last 13 days, what we're focusing on is specifically mobilizing those low propensity voters. The mailer that I shared with you, it actually drops on Thursday because we want to get it out. We do have gaps. So there's two ways for folks. If folks want to volunteer, please go to votolatino.org and you could actually volunteer and sign up for October 29th so that we can do early vote. We're doing it really for two reasons. One is that we want to bank the vote, but also we don't want long lines, because the more there are long lines, especially when you're hearing what Trump and others are saying about this idea that people are going to be voting illegally, they're talking about brown people. They're talking specifically about the Latino community. So for us, it's a form of protection to encourage the community to vote early. So if folks want to bank and volunteer, please let us know. We're going to be on the ground in Arizona this weekend. We're going to be on the ground door knocking with SEIU, also in Philly the following weekend. So if folks want to join us, the more the merrier. We're always super excited to welcome more people in. But if you want to donate, we would really welcome it. It's always easier to get C3 dollars than C4 dollars, but we welcome both. We have now raised $32 million, again, just in our key battleground states, and we are $2.5 million short. So if folks want to help us close that gap, I would be very appreciative. Democracy would be more appreciative, but super grateful to be here with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that is incredibly impressive. So congratulations on that. And Ellie, to you, what do you see as positive and how can people help and support your campaigns? And then I will give it to Zakia to wrap up. I apologize, Stefan. I think we're going to probably run about 5 minutes late. So to you, Ellie.
Well, we're very, very excited. We think that in these states, the student vote's going to be very big. And for right now, we need more volunteers. So if you're interested in our campaign, we would love it. And we don't have an age limit. Everybody's working together. And so basically, we could use more volunteers. Obviously, could also use more funds. But the important thing I think that we will see is that the student vote will be very large. I feel that I don't know if you know, some of the polls are showing, but right now Kamala Harris is a 31-point lead over Donald Trump, 31 points among young voters. And so we just got to get more and more people. We think the key now is getting people to the polls, making sure everybody votes. We definitely have won the issue battle. And so that makes us very optimistic. And I agree with a lot of what the previous speakers have said. And we're also excited about the Whitney Fox race, for example. I bet you if we sat down and compared everything, we would all be working in different ways for the same goal.
Which is what is so exciting about this as a coalition. So that makes me very heartened that with all of our work together, we will see pro-equality candidates, which will then help us make sure that we can see the Equal Rights Amendment be recognized, the 28th Amendment. But I want to thank everyone for being here, for your remarks, for your work. I'm so happy to see in the chat how excited people are to hear about our partners' work, and that makes me think we need to do this even more. So thank you so much, and I want to now hand it over to Zakia just for some last thoughts and remarks.
Well, thank you again, everyone, for being on this webinar, and especially to our panelists. You all are doing phenomenal work, and thank you for putting your very respective links in the chat. So if anyone wants to support these organizations, please do. It's important for all of us to come together and understand how our work builds upon each other. So please go into the chat and help support these organizations, time with your money, however you can best do that. And we got to keep fighting. We have 2 weeks left, and we need the right people in the right places across the country, whether it's in state legislatures, whether it's in the White House or Congress. We need the right people in the right places to stand up for equality and make sure that we have the country that we were promised to have that we don't yet. And we need to work to make sure that that happens. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all for your hard work. And let's keep fighting through the election day and beyond. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.